All right, so welcome to our first breakdown session. Today I'm accompanied by Samuel, also known as Kinky Kong.
Hi everyone.
So in this session, we just thought we sit together and talk about the recent metagame development, and we will also try to make some predictions on the future development of Duel Commander with the new commanders that are coming with Modern Horizons 2, or for example Ragavan or Asmo whatsoever. I'm not going to say the full
Asmo
name.
is enough, I think.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
everyone
so.
knows what we mean when we say Asmo.
All right.
We'll talk about what's the last two big tournaments that happened. The first big one since we've been able to return to paper play. Us Germans haven't quite returned to paper play, but in France it seems they're a bit ahead of us. Yeah, there's been some interesting decks floating around the tournaments. And as with every big tournament, there's always calls for bans.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, in this case, I guess namely either Inalla or Spellseeker. Um,
Yeah, people are heavily debating about it. So the last two major events Kinky was talking about are the monthly ZEP and the ATC Angelic Tournament. And Inalla was performing very well in those tournaments. So it's a Storm combo deck for those who are not yet familiar with it. Basically wins by playing Spellseeker on turn 4, and then you go through some lines, and in the end you drain your opponent with Tendrils of Agony. Just a short thing about the deck. On the one side, it seems to be very fragile and has a lot of angles to attack. On the other hand, you have counter magic and disruption, or the disruption doesn't really matter in terms of resilience, but due to counter magic and spells like, or repeated spells like Unearth, Reanimate, Exhume, whatsoever, you can just restart your chain over and over again. So it makes it pretty hard to interact with the deck. That's what makes it so disruptive, at least according to the paper community. We
plus you
both.
also have
Sorry?
you also have the as you said, the disruption pool, the Grixis pool, and you also have the Underworld Breach, Lotus Petal, Brain Freeze combo line that most of those decks also play, which kind of gives it two angles of attack, both being vulnerable to the graveyard being disrupted, but the deck seems to be able to kind of decide when it starts to combo. So
Absolutely.
it seems quite resilient in that way. We've seen in the Angelic tournament lists there were decks like Golos and Izikar playing a large amount of interaction with the graveyard or with the Spellseeker, like Vanishing Verse and Nihil Spellbomb and Fairy Macabre.
So,
So so the French meta seemed to know that the Inalla deck was a problem before the tournament and have made some changes to their decks according to that, but still lots of lots of the Inalla decks won, which is a testament to their resilience in that sense, right?
absolutely, yes. And as you already mentioned, like, people already packed a lot of hate cards. Like, when was the last time we saw a deck featuring Shadow of Doubt, for example? Which is a cool card, but usually there's not much use for it. Or these days you would try to pack an opposition agent, but that's not the best slots to fit in Azika or Prismatic Bridge, rather. So yeah, it's interesting to see that Inalla, along with either on the angelic tournament, there was, like as you said, Izika, Golos, Lord Windgrace, and at the Zap tournament, it was more aggressive. We saw Adelise. Keenan obviously is a combo deck, and we also had some White Weenie action ongoing with Kithian and Isamaru, as well as Karizev. And
Yeah, two Karizev decks in the top 16, but also in a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Inalla decks in the top 16, which is
quite
not
impressive.
which is quite impressive. It doesn't quite reach Urza numbers
Yeah.
from the Zap Masters in 2019, but still is a lot compared to the representation of other decks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that. I think the decision making on playing Red Deck Wins is probably very interesting here because it's prior to the Ragavan print.
Yep.
And at this point, I think, at least for the French community, well, I mean, there weren't any other big paper tournaments so far. People didn't have that archetype in mind. Everyone was focusing to go against Inalla or have that in mind and pack some graveyard hate and whatsoever. And probably they forgot about Red Deck Wins, and they thought that's a problem to take care of once the monkey is printed. So we can lean into some hate once once Ragavan is played, but not now. And probably that's something that
I'm not too sure about that. I always when we have these bigger tournaments, these 100-man tournaments or something like that, I think there is a part of the player base that is more budget oriented, and yeah, the pool for Red Deck Wins is quite affordable, and although it hasn't been that well represented in the last couple of in the last year or so, that kind of comes down to Omnath and Uro being legal for a while. But with those bans coming through, I think lots of the people that play Duel Commander a bit more on a budget can have come back, and the presence of those players might not have been that seen in the online world when we were mostly online, because the online cards are free, right? So
fair enough, yes.
yeah, when you have budgets in mind and paper, then I guess there might be, just by value of cost, by virtue of cost, there might be more people playing Red Deck Wins.
Could be the case, yeah. Something you could also have in mind is that against a combo-oriented deck, which is creature-based in case of Inalla, or 50% of going off is creature-based, but the breach combo needs some setup. You have some ways of interaction to stall the game and probably win it in your favor, and you also have the possibility to board some hate, for example, Pyrostatic Pillar, which the player also did. Mm-hmm. And this one prevents the opponent from going off unless he's willing to take 12 damage. It didn't count the exact number now, but should be something around 10 or 12.
Yeah, I think by turn 4 against Red Deck Wins, you should be low enough that you can't combo through a Pyrostatic Pillar. I think you probably have to. Your first Spell Seeker has to get a Chain of Vapor, with which you bounce the Pyrostatic Pillar, and then you can go off.
Exactly.
Which stalls the player by a turn. So that's probably a pretty good piece of hate in that sense.
Yep, definitely. Talking of Red Deck Wins, Ragavan is on the rise. So yeah, we both are planning to join the next Prague event, which is on the 17th of July. And people basically expect Inalla and Ragavan to take over this tournament. I'm not yet sure about if Ragavan is too powerful. There are several aspects you could argue about. Inalla is definitely a strong deck, but as we said, I mean, basically, if everyone is trying to it's not sideboarding, but including a decent amount of graveyard hate, it should be a very competitive, very hard field for this deck to reach a higher placement.
Exactly, and with a lot of boarding against Inalla, there might be quite a bit of burn that just gets through because some people drew too many pieces of graveyard hate against a burn deck,
Yeah, that could be the case. But what I find what I find very interesting is that a few pieces are good hate cards against both strategies. For example, Cling to Dust.
Yep.
Yeah, is exiling a card and you gain life. So it's very flexible. Something you see pretty often. You already saw that on some lists from the 2 French tournaments. Was Spikefield Hazard. It exiles a creature. So you can either shoot the monkey or you shoot the Spellseeker. And if there's nothing to shoot, you just have a land, which is okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
and cards like Kaya's Guile, but those have been out for quite a while, right?
Right.
Something that's also interesting about the Ragavan decks, which is probably something that prevented Zogo from being unbanned for as long as it has been, is that having a 1-mana card in the command zone allows you to increase your land count and the amount of 2 and 3 drops that you play, as opposed to Karizev, which always wants to play a 1-drop on turn 1, which get progressively worse as the game goes along. So having a 1-drop in the command zone changes most of the deck building of Red Deck Wins, which I haven't seen in action yet. I haven't been playing Duel Commander long enough to see Zorgo, and I'm sort of excited, more scared to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, I've already done some test games with the monkey. It's definitely impressive. The relevant part here is the mana advantage generated with the treasure token. Sometimes you get lucky depending on the colors you play against, so you can make use of the exiled card and you have some card advantage. But yeah, that's random. Also, if you look at this match now, the monkey versus Inalla might be very interesting, because at some point you might be lucky dropping the monkey on turn 1, your opponent does not have any interaction, and you randomly exile a piece of the combo, which is great in this case. But yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, you really have to be fast in order to win until turn 4. I personally think it's much more easy for most colors to prepare for Red Deck Wins just by adding life gain, compared to preparing or adding Graveyard Hate, because there are many cards that have life gain included, which are still good to play, while you can't just, it's for some strategies you can't just randomly add Relic of Progenitus. I mean, you can do it, probably you have to do it, but it's not like the best choice.
Yeah.
For example, if we're talking about Octavia, it's a deck that needs its own graveyard. So there's
not the best example, because you have a plethora of counter magic to attempt to fight the combo deck on the other side.
Yeah.
And bouncing Spellseeker is also a line that just, in response to the first tutor.
That's right, but
that delays the combo by a full turn, right?
That's right, but on the other hand, the Storm deck also plays a lot of cheap counter interaction, like stuff like Pact or Daze. So you could lose the counter battle here against the mono blue deck, of course. But I think generally, like we've talked about that prior to this conversation, that Octavia is a card or a commander that might still be under the radar. Like
I played. What did I play against it?
On camera, Galazev.
On camera, yeah. And that was a difficult match that I lost, despite having Relic of Progenitus every single game.
Right.
So a deck that grinds very well is rare in mono blue, because even playing an 8/8 for 2 is great, but also playing an 8/8 for 4 is still great, and playing an 8/8 for 6 is still pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Considering that it still has hexproof basically, and can animate things like Mutavault, or things like
Snapcaster Mage whatsoever. Or you mean you're talking
exactly
about the lands?
The lands which kind of survive the grind pretty well.
Right.
And something that I also would like to mention is there's a lot of cards in Modern Horizons 2 that aren't commanders that are probably going to affect the format quite a bit. Cards like Subtlety, cards like Solitude or Grief, or in the case of Hate against Inalla, Endurance is pretty good.
Yeah.
There. You just put Spellseeker back in the deck when they try to unearth it, and you've disrupted the combo as well. And cards like Dorothy Voidwalker, I'm not sure how that's pronounced.
Yeah, something like this.
and Ignoble Hierarch and Esper Sentinel and Suspend, and there's a lot of cool cards coming out that will definitely be interesting to see how they end up affecting the meta.
Definitely, yes. Not only talking, as you said, not only talking about the command zone, but there are many single includes that we'll see some play. I mean, we've talked about that a bit when we were talking about the Modern Horizons 2 spoiler, how those cards could affect the metagame. And funny part is that once Martin said Suspend could be a reason to build Lavinia, I instantly went and tried to build that deck. So probably we will see Lavinia in a future video.
Ooh.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Not saying this is a high tier deck. It's hard to say. I mean, I think prior to the Prague event there will be another ZEP, I guess, another monthly ZEP, or maybe even a bigger tournament. And end of July is the next ban announcement, and I think those two will leave the field. Usually I would have expected stuff like Hogak to come back. Leovold is a very powerful control deck currently. But yeah, people, I mean, you can't really enter a field with Hogak or Octavia or whatsoever if
people are boarding as much graveyard hate.
Yeah, exactly.
To fight Inalla, that's
right.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So I'm curious how it will develop, especially after maybe the monkey leaves the field. Maybe it proves to be okay if people say we are fine adapting against it, and we have no problem with boarding like 2 or 3 life gain slots if we can afford it. And as I said already, so many cards come with incidental life gain already. Like Kaya's Guile has it, or Oko produces food tokens, and
Oath of Kaya, which there's a lot of play in.
Right, Lightning Helix and whatsoever. Like you really have a bunch of stuff to feature for most colors. What I also find really interesting is the new card called Blossoming Calm, which gives hexproof to you, 2 life, and it has a rebound. So that's something I would consider for White Winnie, for example, because you can disrupt the Tendrils of Agony combo by giving yourself hexproof. And this is another example for having a card against both strategies, giving yourself hexproof and gaining life. So you gain 4 life in total, 2 times, and probably you can block a bolt or something your opponent is trying to throw at you.
Yep.
Which is not bad either. So yeah, good. Let's see how it goes.
It'll be very interesting.
Definitely. I guess that's it already. And if you have anything else, tell us now. Otherwise, I would say goodbye to the audience. Thanks for listening. And if you want to stay connected with us, make sure to join our Discord.
We're active all the time.
Yep, definitely. You can also visit us on Facebook. And please subscribe to this channel for more content. Till then, see you next time.
Yep, see you next time.
Ciao, ciao.